Rasundari Devi. She was determined to learn how to read and write. For those of us who are so lucky that we are actually bullied into learning how to read and write, how lucky we are. We are told, please go to the library. My God, how lucky we are. Now, Rasundari Devi wanted to learn how to read and write. Why? She wanted to write a little bit about her life. And there was nothing great happening in her life, but she wanted to say, this is how I feel. When I'm pregnant, this is what I feel. When my baby is born, this is what I feel. She wanted to write about that. Now, how was she going to learn? She was in a big joint family. There was no question of her reading and writing. There was no question of her being seen with a piece of paper in her hands. This was the revolution, if she was seen with a piece of paper in her hand. So what did she do? She would be in the joint family kitchen wearing that, complicated Bengali sari, and she would tear one sheet of her child's alphabet, Bangla alphabet book. She would keep one page at a time. She would keep it in her talapa, and as she was stirring, she would wait till everybody else left the kitchen, and when she was alone, she would open it and look at it, and by heart that letter, trace her finger around that letter, and this is how she learned to read and write. This is how she learned her alphabet. In secret, in the kitchen, using her child's torn alphabet book. And then she wrote an autobiography called Amar Jiban, My Life, and there was a huge controversy. Not just that she was writing about her life, but that, my God, what kind of a woman is this? She is writing about things like pregnancy and childbirth. Of course, all the women in the audience know that this is quite an important part of our lives, and it would be very difficult if there were a rule that you're not allowed to talk about it. And your mother will tell you quite firmly, don't listen to anybody, ask me, talk to me about it. And so this is what Rasundari Devi tells us through her life, that this is where we were as women readers, forget women writers, as women readers, this is where we were not too long ago. Then the fourth and last grandmother for this morning is Rokeya Hossain. Again, 19th, and she lived till 1932, so she lived to see the 20th century. She worked very hard to remove what she called the parda of ignorance. This wasn't so easy. Remember what I said about taking risks when you open those wings. She was born in a village in what is now Bangladesh. She was, of course, not sent to school like her brothers, but she was educated at home, unlike Subbalakshmi. She and her sisters picked up Urdu. But Rokeya had a sister who wanted to learn Bangla. She wanted to learn Bengali because she loved Bengali literature. But when they found out that she was secretly learning Bengali, she was sent to live with her grandparents and quickly, as they put it in India, married off. Now, Rokeya was luckier. Her brother, and all the men in the audience, of course, you know how important you are as brothers. Her brother supported Rokeya's nightly mission. Every night she learned Bengali and English in secret. Her husband was also supportive. Again, brothers, husbands, these are important and necessary figures in our lives. He set aside some money for Rokeya to start a school for Muslim women. So after her husband's death, she continued with her education and writing activities in Calcutta. In fact, if Yasmina in Morocco and Rokeya in Bangladesh could have met, Yasmina would have been proud of the ways in which Rokeya traveled. When we meet these grandmothers, while I've been talking about these four grandmothers, what are the two different reactions we might have? One is a jolt of recognition. When suddenly you see a photograph and say, my God, this looks like somebody I know. The jolt of recognition is that how many of us do not know of some relative, some neighbor's relative, somebody in our own families who at one time was not allowed to go to school or college, who were married when they were children themselves, or whose worth was defined by their ability to, say, produce sons, or to live quiet, cloistered lives. That is one thing. There is another kind of recognition. It is who is doing the remembering. In the case of Maithili Shivaraman remembering her grandmother, or Fatima Mernisi remembering her grandmother, what is happening? Here is a granddaughter who has traveled far, done all kinds of other things, and then she has to learn what it is to go back and find out, this is where I come from. This is where my life began. So that is another point of recognition. But there are two other things. One is, there is the beauty of seeing these grandmothers, what they did to open doors for us, to make life that much simpler for us, so that we have earned the right to go to school, to go to college, at least have some choices in our lives. But what is the sadness? Along with the beauty, there's a sadness. How different are these lives, the stories of these lives, from the lives we still see around us in India? How different are these stories? The details may be different. Maybe you are allowed to learn to read and write. Maybe you are allowed to go to school. Maybe you're even allowed to read a book or even write a book. But how different really is your ability to dream and to put these dreams into practice, to travel, whether literally or in much more complicated ways. To travel could mean to be part of those who decide what will happen to your life, your children's lives, your family's life, the little community you live in, the life of that community, and then your city and your country. So to move from being powerless, from being protected, to becoming a traveler, somebody who has a little bit of power over your own life, and so you can give to other people as well. What is there a difference? I think that is the more important question. The astonishing similarity between these lives and our own. Let's go from women's lives to just a few examples of written texts of women's writing. Again, I shall use specific examples, and all of them are trying not just to write stories, but they are trying to rewrite the world in some way or the other. It could be their home, it could be the community, it could be the nation, but they are trying to rewrite the world around them. Let's begin quickly with one kind of story that we all enjoy, fantasy. When you are unhappy, when you have failed a test, when you've been scolded in class, when you're sitting at lunch afterwards, what do? You daydream that this is not how it happened. Actually, your teacher told you that your work was absolutely the best in class. And you feel just a little better. So fantasy is better than aspirin. Fantasy is a very useful thing. So the same woman I told you about, the grandmother Rokeya Hussain, in 1905, she wrote a fantasy called Sultana's Dream. Now, why is it a fantasy? And then you will see from the story why dreams are so important. Even if dreams are not realistic, they're very important. Because in this dream that Sultana has, the world is turned upside down. The men stay at home in the Mardana. They don't know the word Zanana. In the Mardana, and the women rule the country. What is this world like, this fantastic world? War and crime have never been heard of. Nobody even knows what a war is. Nobody even knows what a crime is, leave alone a crime against a woman. Cooking is so simple, it is a pleasure. You must go home and everybody must ask their brothers and fathers and husbands to cook, so we will discover how simple cooking is. Science is used for the benefit of humanity. Horticulture, the growing of things to eat, is serious business. This is what this fantastic world is like. And later you think about why it was so important to have this dream. Okay, the next story by a wonderful Bengali writer called Mahashweta Devi. She wrote many stories, wonderful stories. I'm going to talk very quickly about two of them. In translation, the first one is called Breast Giver. This is about a wet nurse, a woman called Jashoda, whose job is to feed newborn babies. So, if you like, her sickle, her weapons, her tool, her pen, her computer is her breasts. And this is, of course, in India, where we like to say Mata Devi, you know, and even when a man, who was that cricketer when he was having a fight, I think it was Kapil Dev, he said, Maine maa ka doodh piya hai. You know, so it is the source not only of womanhood, but of your mardangi, you know. So, don't think this is a strange story. This is the stuff of our day-to-day lives. Now, what happens in this story? Jashoda is described, Mahashweta is a very, very cunning writer. All through she describes her as the legendary cow of fulfillment, remember Surabhi, a divine engine, a professional mother, a fruit-bearing tree, chief fruitful woman, goddess, divine cow. All these descriptions are there. Mother India, even mother of the world. But at the end of the story, not only does the milk run out, she actually gets cancer of the breast. So in this story, the good thing about stories is that it's like a puzzle. It's not that the author knows what the puzzle is all about. But they're saying, look at this is what happens. What do you think this could mean? And together we readers try and say, what does this mean? Does this mean if you are a traditional woman who's listening to all the rules and who lives just in this little room, if your whole world can be this little room, feeding one baby after the other, does that mean that at the end it is meaningless? The source of your womanhood, the source of men's strength will be for nothing? Now, one way to answer this question is to look at another story of Mahashweta's called Draupadi. Now you all know who Draupadi is and how in the Mahabharata, in the court, in public, Dushasan tries to pull off her sari, to strip her, and she prays to Krishna saying, Lord, come and help me, not to be shamed in public, and the sari goes on forever. Now you keep that story in the back of your mind. In this story, Draupadi, who's called Dopdi because she's a tribal woman in Bengal, is accused of being a Naxalite. And the expert on catching hold of Naxalites, the elite army unit, describes her as an unarmed target. And as punishment for being suspected of being involved in political activity, she is gang raped. So she's there, having been gang raped, naked, bleeding in this hut, with being watched. The gang raped tribal revolutionary Dopdi is told to dress because the Sahib, an expert in combat politics, wants to see her. But what does Draupadi do? She chooses to remain naked, and what she says actually terrifies this man. She says, "You can strip me, but can you clothe me again? Are you a man? Are you man enough to do more than strip me? It is easy to take that sari off Draupadi. It is much harder to clothe somebody again as a fellow human being." So her powerlessness, she turns into something which actually threatens his manhood. So there is that story. Then let's come down closer home. Language is a very, very powerful thing, and in India, language will immediately tell you which class you belong to, which caste you belong to, which community you belong to, whether you are a man or a woman. But in the case of a woman, a certain kind of language, even when you are a reading and writing and teaching woman, a certain kind of language can be dangerous. This is what happened to the Tamil Dalit writer Bama. When she wrote her autobiography, Karukku, which means, you know, when you see a palm leaf, it's all sharp at the edges, and that's what her life has been like. It's been full of sharp edges, but it also means you can use a sharp edge like a knife to cut through what holds you back. So when she wrote this autobiography, there was a lot of trouble. The literary establishment in Tamil said, "Oh, this is coarse language. This is not beautiful language." What is more surprising is that her own Dalit community, in her village, they said, "You let our side down. You made us sound ugly because you have us talking in the way we talk. You have women cursing. You have, you've shown the world we are ugly." It took 6 months and the support of all the village youngsters to actually teach the village that she was not exposing them. She was saying, this is what life is like. So that language, a working woman's language, a Dalit woman's language, need not be beautiful as somebody sitting in an air-conditioned magazine office in Chennai thinks it should be. Okay, that is another kind of dream, another kind of travel. And finally, coming even closer back here, is the young woman Salma, who wrote poetry and who has now written a novel which has been translated into English as The Hour Past Midnight. In fact, Salma is her pen name because her family got too much attention because of her poetry, because she was daring to dream unwelcome dreams. But the pseudonym, this name has actually given her a convenient disguise. She continues to write not only poetry, but novels. And even better, she is now part of the panchayat in the village she comes from. So this means Salma, a female member of a traditional Muslim household, is a powerful poet, a skillful novelist, and an outspoken panchayat head. Now this gives us room for great optimism. We listen to some of those sad stories, so you know things are possible. I wanted to say some more about her stories, but I think I should, do we have time? See, let me give you a sense of some of the girls and women whose lives are revealed in Salma's book, The Hour Past Midnight. There is one girl who doesn't even have a name. She's anonymous. What is she called? Podum Ponnu, she's called. Podum Ponnu. Because when she was born, both mother and father said, Podum. Ponne Podum. So she is called Podum Ponnu. Enough, girl. Hoping that if they give her this name, there will be no more daughters. So there is Podam Punya. There is another young woman called Firdaus who is married to a man working abroad. But in 1 month, it seems to Firdaus as if her life is finished, it's been lived. All the important things that are supposed to happen to her are already over. There's nothing left for her. And she refuses to live with him. Her family is forced to ask for a talaq. Later her mother is weeping and saying, how did I produce such a wild and defiant child? Firdaus wonders, how did I, a village girl, have the courage to make a decision like that? That is another story. Then there is another story of a girl called Maimun who's divorced, but she is pregnant. So the parents say, well, we have to do something, and the midwife is called in secret to perform an abortion. But this is a crude twig and ointment operation, and Maimun dies a slow, painful death along with the baby. So you have the sad stories, you have the brave stories. What are together these stories are telling you about hidden lives? Hidden lives. And there is a wonderful image in one of these stories which tells you what hidden lives are like. The doorbell rings, and the girls in the house who have come of age, Vaisana Punna, they run to their rooms and hide. In every house in the village, girls who had come of age ran and hid in exactly the same way. This is one image that remained with me. That here is somebody who is actually going back to that jail which was called home for that grandmother, Yasmina. Together, some of these lives that I've spoken of, some of the stories I've spoken of, they have told us that women have walked a kind of a road with some thorns, not a smooth road. And this is the road we must continue on.